I'm Blackbright, broadcasting out of the UK. Welcome to my channel. I'm persevering and I hope this video finds you in the very best of health and in, good spirits. This video is for tenants. There are a lot of bogus landlords out there who are kicking out tenants, and tenants may not know their rights. So they may have been served a Section 21, but the Section 21 might not be legal. And also a Section 8 may not be legal. So I'm going to kind of give tenants an insight about what they should be looking for when a landlord serves them a Section 21. Because if the landlord doesn't have any of these documents, or some of them, that Section 21 can be invalidated. So I hope it's useful, especially at this time of coronavirus, and where, a lot of landlords are just kicking out or serving Sections 21 willy-nilly on their tenants, and the tenants are devastated. The inspiration for this particular video is a couple in Ashford, Kent, who are expecting their first child. They took out a tenancy. I'm not sure if it's fixed term. It sounds as though it might be because they took it out 9 months ago and they've been given a Section 21 to leave in October, which makes it a year. So I've got a funny feeling it might be a fixed term assured hold tenancy, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, they're so devastated. And they're talking about complaints. They've been making complaints since they moved in. But they haven't done anything wrong. They've paid their rent on time, and apart from complaining, they've been pretty good tenants. But the landlord, him and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, they've actually got 1,000 properties to the tune of 184 million. 2 to 3 bedroom properties in Ashford and Maidstone. And now, the landlord is 72 years old. He's decided that he's going to retire. So he's quite at liberty to issue or have served a Section 21 notice. You can do that if you're not in default. Landlords can do that if they're not in default, and providing they've complied with the legislation I've told you before. Well, I'm about to tell you, sorry about that, but what I mentioned before. So they are kicking up a stink because as far as they're concerned, it was their home. And that's the problem. When we rent homes, we somehow forget it's not our home. We forget that it's the landlord's property and it's on loan to us. And we are just paying rent to stay there, and the landlord at any time can serve notice to have their home back. And especially with coronavirus, especially with people being out of work, and landlords not wanting to pay for properties that the rent is not being paid on. So they are going to be issuing Section 8 and Section 21s, but they have to comply with certain legislation. So what's happened with this couple, this Ashford couple, is that they now have to leave in the same month that their baby is due. And they're feeling really, really vulnerable. But for those of you who are renting, always keep it to the back of your mind, especially if you're renting in private property, not council or housing associations, but especially if you're renting from private property. The landlord can serve you notice, and all you get is 2 months' notice. And you don't have to be at fault. Anyway, I digress. Well, I'm not really digressing, but I'm extending the video unnecessarily. So let me get down to it. So the right of a landlord to claim back his property, that's when they use a Section 21 notice of possession. The tenant doesn't have to have done anything wrong, and they call it a non-default possession, which means the tenant has been very, very good, but the landlord needs the property back. He's either going to sell the house or he's retiring and he wants his home back. In this particular case, the Wilsons, like I said, they've got thousands of property and they've served Section 21 notices on all of their tenants. So that's going to be a lot of tenants looking for properties. And the problem is with properties is that most new landlords do not want kids. They do not want animals because they feel it's going to bring down or, accelerate damage to the property. So these tenants are naturally devastated and naturally feeling vulnerable. Anyway, let me see. People who rent get used to it. Yeah, I've already said that. Already said that. I've done quite a lot with that. I've done quite a lot in that little bit with my notes. Okay, a Section 21 is a non-default notice of possession or eviction notice that the landlord must serve their tenants to begin the process and take possession of their property, giving tenants 2 clear months notice minimum. So that's the first thing you have to make sure, that from the date you received it, you've got 2 clear months. That's not very long. Landlords must allow 2 working days for service by post or 1 working day before 4 p.m. if hand delivered. If tenants don't leave on the date of the Section 21 notice, the landlord has to apply for an accelerated possession order. They can do that online and that's going to cost them £355. They don't need a court hearing, but it's not an efficient route if tenants owe rent. So if you owe rent, it's not very efficient for them to do that. But what I'm saying is that for tenants who do delay, and I've seen it on Can't Pay, Take It Away. So on tenants who do delay on paying their rent, they can get that extension, because then the landlord has to go back to the court, which they don't want to do, and it's unfair for them to do. But that is that's kind of where tenants delay the process. If a tenant is in credit, even by 10p, that can delay the Section 21. I mean, tenants aren't normally in credit, but just supposing you decided that instead of paying your rent of 850, you paid your rent of 900, just to round it off. As long as that £50 is in credit, they can't serve a Section 21 notice. Or they have to, they'll delay it until it gets paid off and sorted. It can impact the process or defer the process. If your tenancy is a fixed term, landlords use Section 21 because they cannot allow a Section 21 to expire before the end of that fixed term, even if you haven't paid rent. It can only bring a tenancy to an end at the end of the fixed term. So if you have a fixed term contract, a landlord cannot serve you a Section 21 before the end of that fixed term. So just in case there's bogus landlords out there who are trying to get you out when you're on a fixed term contract, they're not allowed to do that. Section 8 can be used mid-tenancy, for example, if you've defaulted on your rent. And then landlords can actually sue you for costs and rent. So, fixed term, you can't get out before the end of your fixed term with Section 21. But if you've defaulted on your rent, you can be turfed out at any time in between. With Section 8, tenants must be at least 2 months in arrears on the date the notice is served. Now, supposing the notice is served and you just happened to pay rent and you're only 1 month in arrears when that notice is served, that Section 8 is invalid. Similarly, if on the date you go to court, you have paid off 1 month's rent and you're not 2 months in arrears, that Section 8 becomes invalid. So, but check that out. I'm just giving you advice. I'm not a solicitor, so you do need legal advice for this, okay? I'm just kind of giving you an overview. Outstanding repairs. Some, like the couple in Ashford, they started talking about, faulty taps, the garage wasn't closing, stuff like that. there are certain situations, health and safety situations, where a Section 21 cannot be served if there's improvements that need to be done. If the house is defaulting with regard to health and safety requirements. If that is the case, then they cannot serve Section 21 until those repairs have been resolved. However, that Ashford couple, I don't know if they were mentioning the taps and the garage, hoping that it would defer their Section 21. But because the Section 21, well, the repairs under Section 21 don't relate to disrepair, I don't think it's going to make any difference in their case. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure. I mean, they were talking about a stove exploding or something. That would come under health and safety. But there again, it could be a ploy to defer the Section 21 so they don't have to leave on that date. But there again, they could argue that if it was that dangerous, why did you still stay there? I don't know. I'm not quite sure of the pros and cons of that or the technicalities. There is an expiry date on the Section 21 of 6 months from the date of service, which means landlords only have 4 months to get things moving if tenants don't leave. So sometimes you've got tenants who mess around and faff around and they ain't leaving. If they are in that property for 6 months and the landlord hasn't been able to get them out within 6 months, that landlord then has to go back and serve the Section 21 again. So it's a real faff. It costs £79 each time, and £355, I think, if they want to accelerate it. If a Section 21 is served too early, it's deemed invalid. So it's not as if the landlords can say, look, I want to get this out of the way, let me serve it early. If you receive a Section 21 too early, i.e. before the 2 months, it's invalid. So you have a case, you can tell them, look, you're not accepting it, it needs to go back, or whatever. Ashford couple served an eviction notice, stated that they needed to leave in October, but in fact the expiry of the Section 21 notice does not bring the tenancy to an end, and they could bide for more time due to repairs. So when you get the tenancy notice, the Section 21, it doesn't mean that the tenancy has come to an end at that point. If you're compliant, if you're lovely tenants, and you decide, okay, I don't want to give my landlord any hassle, he's been a good landlord or she's been a good landlord, I'm going to leave on the date of the Section 21. And you up and leave. That's fine, that's up to you. But if you don't leave, or you haven't been able to find somewhere by the date on the Section 21, the landlord would have to take it to court, and you get an additional 14 days, I believe. And if you can plead hardship, it's up to 6 months. And I think hardship is whether you have disabilities or something like that. But yes, so plus, if the tenant does not leave at the end of Section 21 notice, the landlord has to obtain an order of possession by the courts and have the order executed by county court bailiffs, enforcement officers, which can take a further 14 days and up to 6 weeks if the tenant... Oh, so I've just said that. The court cannot grant a stay of execution of a Section 21, i.e. they can't stop it, unless tenants can show disability discrimination, public law, or human rights law violations. That's the only way they can stop a Section 21 from taking place. There's a Form 6A that landlords, if they've got somebody acting on their behalf, need to complete. And this is what they've got to have in place before they serve a Section 21. Now, if they haven't done all of these things I'm about to tell you, they cannot serve a Section 21. So you need to know that you've received all of these documents that I'm about to tell you. Otherwise, that Section 21 is invalid, and you can sit pretty until they get their stuff in order. You'll find some illegal landlords will not have done what they're supposed to do. And in that case, you don't have to go anywhere until they've got themselves in order. And it's going to cost them a pretty penny. So, as Form 6A depicts everything a landlord needs to do to keep the Section 21 notice valid. And this should have been done at the start of the tenancy. They can't be as soon as they realise. They can't come and say, oh, look, will you sign this energy certificate? Will you sign this? Will you sign that? No, they can't do that. They should have done that at the beginning of the tenancy. They can't somewhere down midstream just as they're about to. And I mean, you could be a pain in the butt and say, no, I'm not signing it. I should have got that at the beginning. Anyway, so a few instances when landlords cannot serve a Section 21 notice. It's the tenancy deposit protection, where a tenancy deposit has not been properly protected within 30 days after receipt and the prescribed information served within 30 days after receipt. The landlord won't be able to serve a Section 21 until the landlord has returned the deposit or paid the tenant money. There's also, they can't serve a Section 21 if they don't have a license. Landlords must have a mandatory HMO license. That's the multi-story, where three occupiers from different households live in the same house. It's a bit like the house share. You find a lot of properties do that. They have a lot of different tenants renting a room in these houses, and they have to have a license, and the license is 1,100, and it varies depending on what area you live in or what borough you come under, but that is mandatory. And so they can't evict you if you haven't seen sight of the HMO license. So they'd have to trot off to the borough council and buy that license. And once they've made an application for the license, they then can issue. They don't have to wait until they've got the physical document. They can actually just apply for it. And once they've applied for it and they can have proof that they've paid for it, then they can issue the Section 21. They can pay it in two parts. They don't have to pay it all in once. So it's $550 for half, during half the year, and then $550 for the balance. So if you're in one of those multi-occupancy homes where somebody's bought a home and they're renting out rooms to individuals or couples or families, and they're telling you to get out, you say, can I see your HMO license, please? Ooh, that might cause a little bit of trouble, don't you think? So you have to know what you're doing, how you're doing it. Don't be stroppy about it. Be nice. Anyway, so as long as you have to share a kitchen and a bathroom with people who you do not know and are not part of your family, that constitutes a multi-occupancy household. And local authorities have their own HMO licensing scheme, so landlords would need to check what one they need for their particular borough, because they vary depending on what area. There's also something called selective licensing. Now, every landlord must have a selective license. And depending on the area, it can cost about £400. So if your landlord can't show you that they've got a selective license, they can't serve you a Section 21. So if you get a Section 21, you can say, can I see your license, please? Or you can sit pretty. What else is there? If the landlord hasn't applied for a license but has made a valid license application, she or he can serve a Section 21 notice. I've said that. Landlords must give tenants a how to rent guide, which is a government document at the beginning of the tenancy. Would you believe if your landlord hasn't given you this how to rent guide, they can't issue you a Section 21 notice? Now, how many landlords are going to do that? Fortunately, though, if a landlord has a managing agent, a lot of them do. A lot of our landlords don't really manage these properties themselves, to be honest, or to be fair. They get agents, and if they've got agents, the agents would have been responsible for all of that and make sure it's all done properly. But for landlords who are stingy and who don't want to pay for an agent, and if they don't want to pay for an agent, they probably haven't done what they're supposed to do. They could be in deep doo-doo. So it will impede the possession. I don't know if it will stop it completely, but it definitely impede the possession order, the possession of the property, because the Section 21 service will be invalid. And the thing is, if they were supposed to give it to the tenant at the beginning, I don't see how they can give it to them after they've served the Section 21 notice. So I don't even know what happens in that situation. Does that mean the tenant doesn't have to leave at all? That doesn't sound good. I mean, I'm all for tenants knowing their rights and not getting diddled by illegal landlords. But on the other hand, that's kind of unfortunate for the landlord if they've tried to do it themselves, tried to be their own landlord, and haven't realised all of these new legal requirements, which are post-October 2015. They all came out after October 2015. So if they've been renting after October 2015, they would have needed to do all of this. So if they haven't done it, they're going to be in deep doo-doo. So, landlord's legal obligations, and these are a few of them, and I'm going to put a link, so I haven't written out in full. Like they're going to need the new style tenancy compliance form. This is post-October, 1st of October 2015. Valid gas safety certificates. All of these are at the beginning of the tenancy, okay? This is what the landlord needs to give to the tenant. Okay, let me start without any interruption. A new style tenancy compliance form, valid gas safety certificate, an electrical installation condition report, valid energy performance certificate at the right grade, must be E and above. Cannot be left to tenants without, landlords cannot let to tenants without an energy performance certificate of E and above. That's post 2020. They need the smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. Make sure that they have been supplied, tested in your presence and in good order before the tenancy starts. And they need information on the tenancy deposit scheme. Okay, so those are all the legal requirements. There are a few more, which I'll put in the link, but these are the definites that the landlords would have had to have done at the beginning of the tenancy. But like I said, if they got managing agents would have done all of that. With tenancy post-October 2015, where the tenant has complained about the condition of a property, not disrepair, not like your little odd things like, oh, the door handle isn't working or something like that. These are under a breach of condition under the Housing, Health and Safety Rating System. If a tenant has complained under the Housing, Health and Safety Rating System, a Service 21 cannot be served until the landlord has fixed everything under that improvement thing. Okay, landlords will not be able to serve a Section 21 if it is a legitimate complaint. And if they do serve one, tenants can go to the local authority to take up that complaint. If the local authority uphold the complaint and serve an improvement notice, the Section 21 will be invalidated. If the local authority come into your home at any other point and serve landlords with an improvement notice, landlords cannot serve a Section 21 for the next 6 months. So, the landlord cannot serve a Section 21 during the first 4 months of a first assured short hold tenancy. On renewals, they can. So if it's your first ever assured short hold tenancy, the landlord cannot serve you a Section 21 for the first 4 months. Okay, but they can if you've had renewals. Okay, rent arrears, like I said, that's a Section 8 notice, and they can get you out at any time. And it can cost a landlord £79 to serve a Section 21, or over 350. I think it's 355 to accelerate it. Many families are angry, devastated and depressed and feel vulnerable being given Section 21 notice, especially at this time, and especially when they've been good tenants and they've paid their rent and they've kept the property nice and clean. Some people, when they rent, they even improve the property, especially if they've been living there, you know, for over 4 to 5 years. And then after they've improved it, to say that they've got to leave, it must be absolutely devastating. But like I said, people live in rented accommodation and they forget it's not their home. They forget they're renting it, you know, they just get used to it. So like I said, and Section 21 are for no fault evictions. The tenant doesn't have to have done anything. Like I said, the couple in Ashford are devastated and angry. They moved in 9 months ago, probably on a fixed term tenancy, and have been served a notice to move out by October 2020. If they are on a fixed term assured hold tenancy, the tenants must move out unless they come to an agreement with the landlord. If the tenant stays in the property for more than 90 days after the tenancy end, it implies that the landlord has given them a new periodic or rolling tenancy. So supposing you come to the end of your fixed term tenancy and the landlord hasn't come and told you to get out, and you stay there for an extra 3 months or 90 days, you're actually considered to be on a periodic tenancy, which I think is a month by month tenancy, which is a bit like pay as you go. So that is what will happen. It'll be a rolling. There's no security in that, but as long as you know that that's what happens at the end of a fixed term. I'm not sure if the landlord has to agree or what, or how it works. I'm not quite sure how that works with regard to the Section 21. I'm not quite sure how that works. But like I said, you always need solicitors for these kind of videos. However, in this case, as with the Ashford couple, the landlords are retiring and repossessing all of their properties. And sadly, the Ashford couple are expecting a baby in the same month they're expected to move. But like I said, they could delay it. And they probably will, by not leaving and making the landlords go and take out a accelerated option, the accelerated option notice, so that they can get them out within 14 days. The Ashford couple seem to have been complaining about the property ever since they moved in. I'm not quite sure. The newspaper that I got it from, I think it was Kent Live, gave a list of all the complaints, but I think the majority of them were about disrepair, although there was something about an oven blowing up. That might come under the health and safety if they can prove it, and that might give them a little extra time. So the newspaper mentioned that Fergus and Judith Wilson have a portfolio of 1,000 2 to 3 bedroom homes. Net worth 180 million. That's the portfolio. And the landlord is 72 years old and wants to retire, so he's serving all his tenants' notice. I assume that being 72, they don't want the complaints. They can't be asked for the maintenance. And at his age, he just doesn't want the hassle, does he? You can't really blame him. It's just that it's a big responsibility housing people. Landlords do it for the money, and that's solely their motivation. They make profit. Normally one property pays off for the other and they're sitting pretty. They can retire early. But for people living in their homes or renting their homes, that is their home. And it's quite callous, really. It's a callous business to be in, because when you want your home back, it means you're rendering people possibly homeless, who've got children, who've got animals, and I wouldn't want that responsibility. I'd have to say to that tenant, look, I'm going to rent you this house for 2 years, and after the 2 years, and hope that they pay their rent, hope that they're good tenants. So after 2 years, I'm going to want my house back. So they have an idea. But to allow tenants to live in your house for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and it becomes their home. They start decorating it, do renovations and doing all that stuff while paying their rent. And then you think, oh my God, the coronavirus, they might not be able to pay their rent. I don't want the hassle anymore. I want my homes back. I don't even know what he's going to do with all those thousands homes. I guess he's going to sell them off to the government or something. But whoever he sells them off to, he's going to make a mint. But like I said, people could be rendered homeless as a result. And it's a big responsibility to take on. So repossessing homes can be expensive for landlords if tenants are resistant. And tenants do have the power if landlords have not followed all the legal requirements. And I'll leave it there. I do hope this is useful and helps a lot of tenants who may be victims of rogue landlords. Bye-bye.